It's the Planet LP podcast. This is episode 102. I'm your host, Ted Asregadoo. Thanks for riding with us down this musical highway. And with me on the pod this time out is Popdose founder and all-around mayor of the Humanities, Jeff Giles. Hey there, Jeff.
Mayor of the Humanities.
You are mayor of the
Humanities.
Humanities.
No one has ever described me that way. I like it. I want it on a business
mayor of the
card.
Humanities. That's gotta be on your business card. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll take it, man. Thank you.
Yeah. I reference Popdose because I have a series. I started, I think it was 2013, 2011, somewhere in that realm, called Single Play. And I kind of resurrected it. And I don't post every week. I used to be very diligent about posting every week, but I got lazy or I got a job that sucked up all my time. One of the two. Maybe it's a combination. But when I do post, I spotlight 3 songs that I think people should add to their playlists because it's a recommendation post. And sometimes people are overwhelmed with choices that it's kind of nice to have somebody curating recommendations so they can just add it and try it out and see what's what instead of just like opening Spotify and going, oh, this is a lot of choice here. So, Jeff writes for his site. It's called Jefito Blog, but it's spelled Jefito blog, one word. And it has free and subscription-based content. And to me, content is that tech bro way of saying,
I know
this is a person who writes for a living.
But yeah.
But it's there for you to enjoy and enrich your life. So Jeff also has a novel coming out. It's called Langley Powell and the Society for the Defense of the Mundane, published by Humorist Books. He's written probably 1 billion words in various websites, like Rotten Tomatoes, Ultimate Classic Rock, Popdose, Diffuser FM. I think you wrote some stuff for Diffuser.
And a lot for them, yeah.
Yeah, you've been podcasting for over a decade, probably going on 15 years at this point. And you're currently the co-host with your friend Matt Wardlaw, who's a friend of mine too. We're colleagues. It's called The Record Player, which you can get on any podcast app that lives on your phone or on your computer or wherever. I listen to it. You should listen to it just like you listen to Planet LP. So there's my recommendation for that. But it gets better. Jeff has 3 books in the works, 2 nonfiction and another novel. With all that said, let me just say thank you for being on the Planet LP podcast. I feel like I'm lucky to have some time with you because of all that work you
make me sound so busy. I love it.
Well, you are busy. I think so. So as I said that, it's a Sunday that we're recording this. So a day of rest and reflection, I guess. And we're going to sort of not quite rest, but talk about and we'll reflect on some songs, some single play songs. We're not going to talk about albums, although probably we'll reference them, but we're going to recommend some songs. One new, one older. And hopefully the older songs are ones that maybe you haven't heard of, maybe you have, I don't know, and maybe you want to give a re-listen to. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jeff for his first pick. Why don't we start with your older pick? Because that was an interesting one. Yeah. Give us the backstory on this.
This goes all the way back to 1998. And I think actually probably has its roots, oddly enough, in that big fat hit that Joan Osborne had.
One of Us. Yeah.
The producer was a guy named Rick Chertoff, who already at that point had a pretty deep resume. He was the person behind Cyndi Lauper's She's So Unusual, among other things. One of those other things was at least the first record by the Hooters, a band that you may not remember. I do. Probably heard their hits. Well, you do because you worked in radio for a long time.
I know. And I played them a lot too. So yeah.
Yes. I was just going to say they had 1 or 2 very persistent 80s hits, Day by Day. And then what's the other one? And We Danced, right?
And We Danced. And then that All You Zombies was actually a single, I think, too. Because I remember playing that and I thought it's kind of an odd song. And it didn't really, I think it kind of stiffed out. I don't think it really went anywhere. May have done some things on alternative or modern rock radio, but I was working sort of kind of a hybrid of top 40 and adult contemporary. So I guess they called it hot AC, but yeah, we played, I think those 3 songs definitely. Yeah.
So, the Hooters were kind of an 80s thing. Cyndi Lauper, at least as far as the charts were concerned, was kind of an 80s thing. So then Rick, he has sort of this comeback as a producer with the Joan Osborne record, which sells like gangbusters. And he ends up with his own sort of vanity imprint through Mercury. And one of the things that he decides he wants to do with this label, I think it was called Blue Gorilla, is make a new Hooters record. So he gets together with the guys in the Hooters and they start working on this album. And that album became, I don't know how I'm going to segue into this, but it became a record called Largo, which is various artists' compilation concept album inspired by the Brave New World Symphony by Dvorak.
It's almost like you can't make that stuff up, right? It's just like
No, yeah.
that's called a very diverse set of elements kind of coming together there. Yeah.
Yeah, and they did to make the record too. On this album, you have the Chieftains, you have Taj Mahal, you have Cyndi Lauper, you have Joan Osborne, you have Levon Helm. Willie Nile is a name that most people probably won't know, but you get the point. There were a lot of
Mhm.
different people that came together for this. And the songs, it will not surprise you to know that Dvorak is never really mentioned by name, but there's this sort of well, if you know the story behind the symphony itself, the idea Dvorak came to America at a very sort of pivotal moment in the country's history, and he was really stricken by what he saw. He was impressed with this, flowering of democracy. He loved seeing Americans, and so that informed the symphony. And so, reflective of that in this record, there's this strain of Americana um, that I think is sort of the connective thread along with some musical motifs, but I don't have a degree in musical theory, so I'm not going to get into that. The point is, I love this record.
Mhm.
I love many songs from this album, and one of them is the one that I picked. It's called Largo's Dream, and the vocals are handled by a guy named David Foreman, who, if you are a real record head, you may know him by name. He put out an album on, I think, Arista in like the late 70s, early 80s. It didn't
Yeah,
sell.
the name does not like ring a bell for me. I'm just like I have no idea who this vocalist is, but he's quite strong on this song.
Yeah. These days, he performs as, I think, the lead singer in like this New Jersey based soul review called, I think he calls himself Little Isidore. There are so many strange sidebars in all of this, but yeah, I love his voice. I have a real soft spot for people who can mostly almost sing, like John Hyatt, guys like that. And Foreman, I think, fits in that bucket. And the lyrics are, the guy who's singing the song, he's singing to this woman named Ramona, and he's having this dream of her, and they're sort of running toward each other, but they can't get to each other. She's got a banjo. She's playing Mercy, Mercy Me. He makes a reference to, at one point he says, he's Joseph Young of Africa, but then he sails across the ocean to this new world, and now he's Mighty Joe Young. Like, it's just sort of this grab bag of again, Americana. And it's all set against this backdrop of this insistent up and down piano melody. It's very gentle. There's a mandolin. I think when we were talking about the song before we started recording, you described it as maudlin.
A little bit, yeah. There's a little modeling feel
it's
to it.
a really, I don't know, dreamlike ballad, but I think the picture that it paints, that it evokes, is very rich. And
Yeah, this was the first time. Well, I have to qualify that because I may have listened to it when you originally posted about this song on Popdose back in, I think, 2008. So I'm sure I listened to it, but it's been a while. So I don't go back often and reread Popdose posts from '08. But you had
same.
linked it linked it on your Hafito blog as I was preparing for for this episode, and I went back and read what you wrote, both on your Jefito blog and Popdose, and then listened to the song. And it is sometimes, as you said, gentle. There's a gentleness about the music, but it adds to this power in the
Mm.
lyrics and the performance. You're right. He's not this incredible vocalist like we would, elevate somebody he's got a bit of more of a raspy, scrappy sound in a way, but it works to great effect. I was just like, wow, this is a powerful song. I really enjoyed it. I was glad to have either been reintroduced to it or just introduced to it for the first time, because I'm so old I can't remember things.
I
Cognitive decline,
empathize.
folks. But yeah, I did. So thank you for sort of refreshing a playlist to me. Like, here's a song that kind of stands out because oftentimes, at least I don't know about you, but sometimes I get stuck in a sort of a sound alike, um,
Sure.
yeah, pattern circle that I tend to gravitate towards certain styles of songs. And then when one comes out that breaks that mold, it stands out to me, makes my ears perk up, and I go, "Oh, this is actually something to listen to, not just once, but like put it on a playlist and really kind of get lost in it." So, good choice
Yeah, I
on
feel
that
like,
one.
you were talking about how all of us now in the streaming world are sort of like the men that they used to show in grocery store commercials that are just kind of wandering around alone, staring at shelves, not knowing what to do, bewildered by this preponderance of choice.
Yes.
And you've got the algorithm to point you in new directions, but I think streaming platforms have a way of being like, okay, this is what you like. It's do you do the Spotify day list thing?
I actually mostly use Apple Music, but they do have a
All right.
new music daily, which they update
Yeah.
every day, supposedly. But it's similar to
Well,
what you're talking about.
so I think 3 or 4 times a day, there's a Spotify, what they call a day list, and it tells you, it's Monday morning, and on Monday morning, you tend to listen to this. And so I'm going to give
Oh,
you
sorry.
stuff that
This is
sounds
different.
like
This is
this.
right. This is
Yeah.
different. I thought you were talking about new music, but sorry. This is
Well,
more interesting,
some of it is
actually.
new music. It is interesting, and I do it a lot. However, it does have the net effect, I think, of reinforcing patterns that you've already established as a listener. It can get you into a rut. Like you said, it's hard to you want to listen to something new, but you don't know what that is. It can be hard to answer that question.
It is, yeah. I mean, because you could go on their new music daily, whether it's Apple or the Spotify version, and just skip, because maybe it's not really speaking to you. I don't know.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are some surprises that come up. And
Yes.
when they do, it's like, oh, stop. Let's pay
Yeah,
more.
man.
Let me pay more attention to that.
That's why I put myself through their New Music Friday playlist every Friday.
That's good,
100 songs and probably 85 I don't ever want to hear again every week. But
man. Now you know what it feels like to be a music director, right? You just given this pile of back in the day when you were actually getting physical copies, but it was just like this
yeah.
endless torrent, and your desk is just littered with albums, CDs, and singles, and you're like, and then publicists and promoters are like, "Did you get the new blah blah? It's here somewhere. I don't know."
Yeah, and now the torrent is a fire hose and you don't even
Yeah.
have the thing to look at
No, yeah, it's just he just comes up. You might see the cover art. Sometimes it's crappy cover art,
yeah.
but sure enough. So, I'm gonna go back in time too, but I'm gonna go back to 1980 for my old pick, and I have the album that I bought back in 1980, and it is The
Yeah.
Clash, Sandinista. Can you see that? Is it blurry? Is it
I
there?
can.
You can. There it is.
I want
This
I
is
want you to know I tried to go back to 1980 as well. I tried to
yeah.
match you on this, but I was 6. And so, what I would have been listening to in 1980 was
Was what a 6-year-old would listen to in 1980, right? Whatever was
well,
on the
it would have
radio?
been whatever was on the radio,
Yeah.
exactly. I was gonna
Yeah,
pick
yeah.
something like Slow Hand by the Pointer Sisters, but, I thought, what kind of story do I have to tell about something that I was listening to when I was 6. So anyway,
I,
yes, we're
I
back in
think with
1980
this,
now.
with Sandinista, I did not buy this in 1980, but this is the pressing from 1980. I bought it in, I think, in 82. And I was, well, I make no bones that I live in the Bay Area. So I was in Berkeley, California, of course, at a store called Rasputin Records. Still exists. I
Hmm.
think they call it
Yep.
Rasputin Music now. And I'm just leafing through, and I saw this album, and I notice it had 6 sides to it, and you can see the little green dots that I put on here.
And you were
This was
like,
my
oh, that's
little
more sides than
this is my
usual.
little radio thing that I was going. I had a radio thing going
Nice.
on there when I would always like, oh, this is a good song, and this is a good song, and so I would put these little tabs on there. But I go up to the cash register and I said, is this, I'm like, is this any good? And the guy looks at me in the usual kind of record snob way. You got 3 albums on there. Of course, you're going to find at least one song you're going to like, And I said, okay. So I just,
I
I'm
miss
this
those
suburban
guys.
kid in Berkeley, and just I bought it anyway. But I've listened to this album quite a bit, and it's interesting when I went and kind of dug into the backstory of this release. I didn't realize that the Clash was pissed off that their label did not want to release London Calling as a double album, and they made them release it as a single album, I believe. And then same label, which I believe is CBS Records, turns around and releases Bruce Springsteen's The River, and they're like, "What the hell?" So they decided that they were going to put out this massive, 3-disc album at a lower price. It was going to be about $1 less than the list price. And in order to do that, they said, we won't take any royalties off the first, I think, 200,000 copies. It was something like that. It was a lot. So they didn't make any money. The band didn't make any money for the first part of it. The label made all the money off of that. And then the reviews started coming in. I was reading Wikipedia about the reviews, and it was not good. Like most of the major music press were all like, "What the hell is this? What's up with the Clash?" Um, New Musical Express was unkind, but then there was the Village Voice, Robert Christgau. He said, "This is on Wikipedia, so it's not like I've really dug really hard for this quote." He said, "If this is their worst, which it is, I think they must be the world's greatest rock and roll band." So, so I picked the song "Lightning Strikes" not once but twice, and it starts off side. It's the first track off of side 3, and
Mhm.
I really like the song because it's the Clash doing rap, but not like we're going to copy uh, rap artists of the day. We're going to use rap within the context of a Clash song. And I think it works well. I think it works well better than another really famous rap song from 1980, Blondie's Rapture, which I thought was more of a crass money grab because they fused disco and rap together. Um, Although they had a number 1 hit and the Clash didn't, but but both those albums came out the same year, Auto American and Sandinista, which is where Lightning Strikes comes from. But I was really struck by the fact that it got such lousy reviews, but now it's revered as this sort of must listen album. And it's very diverse in style. I mean, they go all
Yes.
over the map in terms of style. Like you don't have that Clash sound. Sometimes they're like, doing full on reggae, and sometimes disco, and then of course rap, and then sometimes rock. But yeah, it really is all over the map. But that's my pick,
And
my
that
old song.
that contributes to the mixed critical response, right?
Yeah,
Bands like The Clash, at least at that time, you would expect them to sound a certain way, and
yeah,
and not really want them to go too far afield. And uh, I had never heard this before. I've never listened to Sandinista start to finish, and it's interesting. I think for a younger listener who is more accustomed to modern hip hop sounds, I think this song would probably seem pretty basic. But if you
pretty
try
much.
to listen
Yeah,
to it in the context of its era, what you hear is a group you hear some musicians that have their ears to the street, and I think
Mhm.
that's, I'm not saying ears to the street because of the hip hop, just because you know top to bottom, this record is very eclectic, like you said. They're absorbing what's happening around them, and this song is part of that,
Definitely,
and it
definitely.
does
So
work well.
it does. It's probably not the best. I think the Magnificent Seven is probably the better of the two. Kind of, we're gonna fuse this kind of dance beat with a rap, but I don't know. I kind of like Lightning Strikes a little bit more, obviously, since I'm recommending it. So now
And you
we
were
turn.
open
Oh,
to
go ahead.
this in 1982.
I
You were
was
open to
definitely,
this.
yeah. I was really taken by, I guess, what was then called the new wave. Not the
Mm,
synthy stuff, but the kind of post punk, uh, guitar based uh, music that was kind of on the bubbling underneath. The Clash, of course, had they did great with combat rock because that was like their big commercial success. But then you go back a couple years before that, and Sandinista was sort of a, I don't know, it was this behemoth of an album that got a drubbing in the press. I don't know if it sold well. It didn't really have any hits, but it's got some good
right.
songs on it. I mean, some great songs, really, to me, at some level. And like I said, I think now most will most music lovers will probably hold that up as a great album. So, all right, so we're turning a page here to new.
Okay.
Ding. Okay, so you I don't have any. This is a
I like the
bit of a
sound
low
effect. That's
rent
good.
podcast sometimes, so I've got to do my own sound effects. So you're up with your newer pick.
Yeah, this is from an artist called Cold Specs, and she has been absent for I want to say 5 or 6 years. One of those artists who has attracted a certain amount of critical acclaim with her first couple albums, but has not set the world on fire in terms of sales. And I had honestly sort of forgotten about her, and
Mhm.
I looked at her as one of those artists that I could not safely assume that there would be more music from her. And so when I saw that this new single was out, I was really excited. It's called "How It Feels," and again, it's the first thing she's put out. I want to say since 2017. And if you haven't listened to Cold Specs, uh, I recommend that you do so. I think she has a really distinctive vocal and musical sound. I'm actually curious to get your take because I think vocally she reminds me a little bit of artists like Joan Armatrading and acts like
Mhm.
that. And I wonder how this song struck you if you heard it in the same context that I did.
I don't know about Joan Armatrading, but I felt like there was a kind of a jazz underbelly to it, in her vocal style. Not necessarily. Maybe that's wrong to say that, but there's a vibe, maybe a vibe I'm getting from it. But I've heard it a few times ever since when you said this is going to be my newer song, so I listened to it a few times. I found it to be one of those. First off, I was surprised that you picked it. I don't know why, but I thought, really, this is an interesting pick from Jeff. All right, so I listened to it a little bit more intensely, and what my takeaway from it was her unique vocal style.
Yeah.
That stood out to me as something that is so different, or at least different from what I'm hearing these days that
Yeah.
artists are doing. So I do like her vocal style. You can tell she's not a novice. She's been around the block, so she has that kind of she has a sense of being an accomplished vocalist, but not like classically trained. It doesn't seem like it, but the way she uses her voice in the context of the song, again, works very well. Much like Largo's Dream. We slightly different in that the vocalist who sings Largo's Dream, I don't think he's good. He's effective, but Cold Specs is
Yeah.
much more. You can tell now. This is a vocalist. This is somebody who knows how to really
Yeah.
bring a lot to a song. So that's kind of back of the napkin takeaway on this one. So,
The other thing that I would add before we talk about your pick is
mhm.
that I was saying I saw her as one of those artists you can't really assume that you're going to get more music from her just because she's not super high profile. I found out a week or two after this came out, she is currently experiencing homelessness. So
Oh my God.
there's
Wow.
another reason to listen to it, and also this is really reflective of how hard it is for artists to make money in this day and age unless you are at a certain absurdly difficult to reach level.
The tail is very long, but it's very flat on the bottom and you don't make much. But if you're at that
Yeah.
1%, wow, the lion's share goes to you, you know? I mean, we've democratized the way we publish books and publish music, even films
Yes.
and television shows, and podcasts, and it's led to that effect where it's very difficult to stand out in a crowded field. Um, and that's true with all the arts now. And I really lament that has happened. It's both liberating to see that it's easier. The bar to entry is easier than it used to be, but it's also it feels really, I don't know, defeating that you can
Mhm.
put this art out in the world and nobody cares. I mean, or very few people, and not enough to where you can say, maybe get that feedback and feel like, is this worth pursuing? And can I make a living, like feed myself and do this? So I'm really sorry to hear that she's fallen hard times with homelessness. That's really, that's pretty tragic. I hope things turn around for her.
I do too. And from an academic perspective, I think that this moment that we're in that you're describing is very interesting. And part of me would like to see where all this is going to lead. How we're going to
Mhm.
continue. What's the incentive for people to make art?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I feel like it's in us. We're going to continue doing it, and people will continue making money by doing it. I don't know what that looks like, and it's really a fascinating example of how human nature, what we want is often not what we need. Like I remember being a kid and being so desperate to hear everything. It was so exciting to hear a new piece of music, but there was that barrier, that economic barrier, and now it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And by removing it, we have devalued what was behind the barrier in the first place. Like we need to have some element of friction between us and what we want. Otherwise, we don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's a weird thing.
yeah,
It's like when I went to 31 Flavors once and I was asking the person who worked there, I said, "Do you get free ice cream?" They said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "That must be great." They said, "For the first week it was. Now I can't
that's
stand
right.
ice cream."
Exactly. Exactly.
So my newish pick is by a band that comes out of New York, the New York State area. I think they're actually in New York City, and they are called As for the Future. And the song is called "The Mob." And I featured this
Yeah.
one on single play, so you can go to Popdose and read what I wrote. I'll summarize essentially from the headline. I said, "Don't be fooled by the breezy feel. A dark message floats on the surface." And it's got kind of this Brazilian, almost like,
It
Brazil
does.
66 sound. It kind of a throwback to like the 60s era and maybe early
But
70s.
not,
But
it doesn't sound like Jobim. It sounds modern. To me, it sounds
yeah,
almost like Swing Out Sister Had a Baby.
ah, interesting.
I like this song a lot. I
Yeah.
was
So
much like you
it's,
were surprised by Cold Specs. I was surprised by these guys. And I noticed that they've got like 500 monthly listeners on Spotify. So
which
how did
is
you find them?
I found them through Howard Wolfing. He is a publicist and he sends me with due diligence a lot of new music. And I do listen to, I can't say I listen to all of it, Howard, but thank you for sending it. Okay. I listened to most of it. And then this one came in. I was all like, yeah, okay. You've read press releases and pitches
Yes.
from PR. And so sometimes you get, at least from my perspective, I get a little numb by the sheer
Yep.
amount of submissions, but I try to do my due diligence and go through them. And then I just clicked on the link. I was like, well, listen to this. And I was really taken by it. I was like, okay, here we go. And then I started listening to the lyrics and I'm like, oh shit, this is dark. Oh my God. So the mob, as I said, is wicked in its critique of an aggrieved group's mentality, but it never specifies which side the mob comes from, whether it's the left or the right. That's because mob mentality can affect anyone and any group. I thought at first, I thought maybe this is kind of a novelty song, but it's not. This is a band that's dedicated to this kind of Brazilian music genre. Um, I recommended it in Popdose. I'll recommend it here on Planet LP. And it is, As for the Future, is actually a title or from a Brazilian novelist. She died, I think, in the 70s. Her name escapes me. It is, maybe I'll do an edit here.
I have no clue. Otherwise, I would
Yeah.
help you.
I thought
I'm not just sitting here watching you flail
I looked,
for fun.
I looked it up. And oh, here it is. Here we go. Now look, saved by technology all of a sudden. Maybe I don't have to do the edit. All right. The Brazilian novelist is Clarice Lispector. And they took their name from this novelist. And she died, unfortunately, of ovarian cancer at a fairly young age. She was 58 years old, I think 58, 59 years old. But she wrote very kind of stream of consciousness novels. And this the name of the band to me kind of I guess speaks to that way of let's just kind of get into a headspace, and then I'm just going to kind of tell you a story about the mob, and we're going to kind of feel
Mhm.
this sort of Brazilian vibe, and it's kind of nice and it's pleasant and it's breezy, and like, wait a minute, this is getting disturbing the more I listen to these lyrics. So but
I love it.
a good one. So what I'll do is I'll take all four of these songs. The mob's already on my evolving playlist. But I'm going to add the two that you recommended, and I'm also going to add the Clash to the single play playlist, which is on Apple, and I have one on Spotify as well. It's through Planet LP, and I will share that on the show notes too, so that you can listen to those songs. Because I got to tell you, this is a sidebar, but Meta, Facebook, Instagram, they've been getting really weird about copyright infringement. And what I mean by that is if I shared, and I've shared on the Planet LP Facebook page, um, a promotional video that was put out by a band, and it
Right.
was flagged
You get to
as
see the
saying
video.
you're copyright infringement. I'm like, but
Yeah.
it's coming from the band. I'm not posting this to make money or anything. I'm just posting it to say, oh, look who's got a new album coming out. And there were four
Yeah.
of those that were flagged. And, they send these sort of threatening messages like, if you don't take corrective action now, you may never post on Facebook again. So
Okay.
I had to delete
Yeah.
some videos and things like that. So that's why I'm kind of pushing people towards the streaming
The
stuff.
playlists. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you for picking that track. I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of the record.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I was listening to it this morning, and it's good. It's very diverse in terms of
Very
its. I
pleasant
mean, they
surprise.
still are
Again,
rooted in that style, but yes, but it's not the same vocalist throughout the entire record. It's different vocalists.
so it doesn't all sound like "Swing Out Sister Had a Baby."
No,
what
it
you're
does
telling
not.
me. All right.
Swing Out Sister Had a Baby.
All right.
Break out. Now there's a song I played a lot too back in the day when I was a
bet.
young man in radio. And there
Very
was
proud to
another.
have made you sing it today.
Yes, thank you. Jeff, I want to thank you for being on the Planet LP podcast. I always love having you on. You're always a
I always love
great,
being here.
great conversations, and best of luck on all the projects that you've got in the fire, and then this novel that's coming out this month. I'll just say for July it will be out. I'm not sure the exact date, but they've told you a date. But we'll see when that happens.
The day they've given me is the 24th of July, which is 3 days from when you and I are talking. So
Okay. All right.
I am crossing my fingers that this is actually. I don't mean to sound like I'm casting aspersions at my publisher, but in this industry, things happen. You never really know. You can't count this thing until it's actually in your hands. So I'm saying they're telling me it's the 24th. I hope it's the 24th. I'm looking forward to this book coming out. It's you can get more details at langleypowell.com. It is a supernatural comedy.
Yes, and I will link to that in the show notes as well. So
thank you,
Jeff. So long. Thank you. All right. And thank you, Planet LP listeners, for listening. Without you, who would I be? Just a guy talking into the void. So we will talk to you very soon. And thanks again for listening. Take care.